Hello, hello. We are live. Welcome to my channel. If this is the first of a monthly series of topics related to medical tourism for Black women. To my subscribers, welcome back. And if you're new to my channel, welcome. So let me introduce myself. I'm Dr. Natasha Ramantal. I'm also known as the Medical Tourism RN. And on my channel, I cover all aspects of medical tourism for Black women if they decide to seek healthcare or treatment abroad for any reason. And I provide education in order for Black women to make the most informed decisions about their healthcare and have the best outcomes and experience. So if this is of interest to you, make sure you hit the subscribe button and subscribe to my channel, and also hit the notification bell so you're alerted when I post new content. Now, I have a great show for you this evening. Have you ever wondered why people travel thousands of miles to see a doctor? You know, for medical tourism, that's the term. We're going to dive into the fascinating psychology of medical tourism, where health meets adventure and where cost savings meet risk. And also, treatment choices reveal more about our minds than you may think. Before I introduce my guest today, I do want to say thank you to my subscribers. This past week, I hit 800 subscribers. So yay. And I want to thank you. I want to let you know that I appreciate you, and I'm going to continue to put out really good content. A lot of the content I have comes directly from you, directly from requests to cover certain topics or certain countries. But continue sharing my content with your friends, with your family, your loved ones. Help me reach 1,000 subscribers, okay? According to my analytics, 88% of my viewers are actually non-subscribers. So go ahead and do me a favor and hit the subscribe button. Go ahead. I don't want you missing out on any important health information, okay? So hit the subscribe button, and without further ado, I'm going to introduce an amazing woman to you guys so that we can have our chat today. Dr. Kathleen E. Walls, she's the owner and founder of The Greatest Counseling and Consulting in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. She's a clinician, she's a leadership coach, she's an educator, a facilitator, an author, and a keynote speaker. She's also the president of a nonprofit, Sisters for Harmony, which I'll let her share a little bit more about that when she comes on. And Dr. Walls has written and self-published 2 spiritually focused self-help books and the children's book series, The Adventures of Froggy T and Bunny. So I'm going to let her talk about that as well. So I am going to bring in Dr. Kathleen E. Walls. There she is.
Hello. Welcome. Hello. Here we are.
All right. I did a brief introduction of you. Thank you for joining. I want you to share a little bit more about what your books are about. I talked about what you do, everything. So go ahead and introduce yourself.
Yes. Well, first and foremost, thank you so much for having me. I'm so excited for you. I'm excited to be here. When I first learned about you, it was my husband who started following you first. And he's like, you got to see what this lady is doing. You got to see what she's doing. And so I started watching your videos and I was hooked. And I was like, wow, what a very interesting topic, this idea of medical tourism. And for those of us who love to travel and are interested in our well-being, to have someone such as yourself really leading us and guiding us in this way is so very important. So thank you so much for the work that you do.
Thank you.
You're welcome. So who am I? I feel like an old, who was that? Was that Beanie Man? Who was that? Who am I?
Yes, that's right, Beanie Man.
So make me start winding. Look.
We can do that after.
Oh, after? Okay, I'm sorry. Let me come back, y'all. So who am I? I am a doctor of clinical psychology. I am an educator, facilitator, and an author. As you mentioned, I have been in private practice now 19 years. I just can't even believe it's been that long. And I have been educating people really since I came out. And I say that because when I was 3, my teacher, Sister Pat, called a parent-teacher conference and told my parents that Kathleen is bossy and the children don't know who the teacher is, me or her. And my mother said, so you're telling me she has good leadership abilities?
There you go.
Come on. Come on. So that was the beginning of me being a leadership coach too. So I am who I am. I've been this way. It has nothing to do with education. It has to do with DNA and genetics.
That's it. Natural leader. That's
Just
what it
natural.
is.
Yes, yes. So with that, as far as being an author, my adventures of Froggy T and Bunny, a hip hop tale, and there go my babies.
Yes.
They combine my love for education, leadership, and psychology, and I mix that all into these books. They're called a hip hop tale because they rhyme. And part of the fun is finding the rhyming pattern. I push fluency, vocabulary in the process of also teaching emotional skills, social emotional skills, feelings, vocabulary, identification, and healthy communication and relationships. And all of the books have glossaries at the end because I think it's important that people have a strong vocabulary so that they can fully express themselves. And there's also self awareness and conversation starters at the end. There's activities at the end of every book.
Tell us a little bit more about the conversation starters.
Yeah, so it's wonderful because so many times parents have difficulty starting conversations with children when they start to reach a certain age, especially around that 8 to 12-year-old, which is known as the tween period, right? It's in between childhood and
Right now.
say it again now, say it again.
Two of those right now, 8 and
Oh yeah.
10. Yes.
Oh yeah, you got them, right? So it's after childhood, so we're not babies anymore. And
Right.
but it's before that teenage life. And so it's like, but you're not grown yet. And so these books are a great way to tell relatable stories like Bunny gets bullied for the first time and how does it impact her mentally, emotionally, and physically. Froggy T wants to retaliate, but he also wants to leave that life behind. So, right. So these are real thoughts and feelings that everybody can relate to regardless of age. But sometimes we don't know how to start those conversations because having the personal, I am going through this, sometimes seems a little bit too challenging and vulnerable. So when we can externalize it onto or through a story, the stories then become great ways to start these conversations. Like, if you were Bunny, what if you were Bunny's friend, what would you do?
Mm.
What did you notice about Froggy T? How could you tell that he was frustrated? Oh, you could see the scowl in his brow. He wasn't smiling like he used to. Oh yeah, that reminds me of when sometimes I wake up in the morning and I'm in a bad mood and my sister does.
Mm.
You see, and so now we start to bring in these conversations. And it's a great way for parents to start to incorporate their values. How do you want your children to act in relationship to each other as siblings, as family members, as representatives of the family, also as community members? And so these stories are so relatable. Anytime an adult reads them, they say, "Did you write these for my kids or did you write them for me?" I said,
Right.
"Real talk, I wrote them for everybody."
No, that's true. Everyone can draw from that because we need that at every stage. Certainly, when you have children, young children, and those getting into adolescence, I think that helps because we're talking about anything pertaining to mental health and behavioral health, and that helps us transition into what we are going to talk about
Yes,
today.
yes, yes.
So, our topic today is the psychology of medical tourism.
Mm,
Dr. Walls, you already know I cover all things medical tourism, and
yes.
it's a huge decision for
Hmm.
anyone to decide to even seek care abroad, whether it's for
Yeah.
one-time thing or what they think is a one-time thing, maybe surgery or some
Hmm.
type of treatment for whatever it may be for
Hmm.
themselves, for a partner, for a child, for a
Hmm.
parent, or even just
Yeah.
any loved one. And
Yeah.
there's a lot that goes into it because I always tell people there are three reasons, predominant reasons, why people tend to go abroad. And it's usually for medical care. And that's
Hmm.
usually availability, accessibility, and cost, right?
Mm.
Oftentimes they find that either the procedure is not available or they just can't seem to get it in
Yeah.
wherever they're coming from. And it's not only the US, but I'm predominantly speaking about the US. Um,
Hmm.
maybe a certain treatment is something that is not approved by the FDA.
Yes.
Maybe they want to try it somewhere else.
Yeah.
Accessibility, there's a long list when it comes to getting on someone's surgical list or treatment list. It could be for cancer, it could be fertility treatments, whatever it may be. And then the biggest one that I find that people leave, at least the US for, and also the UK, is cost. You know, a lot of times they can find up to 90% savings of cost in doing the treatment as well as whatever care that comes along with it. So it's worth paying for a plane ticket to go somewhere else. But with that decision comes a lot of psychological things. And I wanted to talk about that because there's anxiety, there's thoughts about, you know, if you didn't experience any type of healthcare in the US, you may be concerned about going somewhere else that's foreign to you, but you've decided to take that step. So talk about that a little bit, maybe fear, anxiety, even of the procedure or after, pre and post.
All of this is so true. And I had to give a shout out to Eloise because Eloise said, let me get my pen. That's right.
Eloise, that's my sister.
Is it Eloise? Okay, I'm sorry. Eloise, thank you. Look, see, no, that's right. I got my pen. You said accessibility, availability, cost. I was like, yep, those are real. Yeah. I mean, anytime we're talking about our health and well-being, it usually triggers some sort of anxiety, because we don't know what we don't know, right? And it is also coupled with the fact that now we have to be open, we have to be vulnerable, and then we got to trust.
Yes.
And those right. Those things are hard to do just on a day-to-day with people we know, let alone with people we don't know. And by the time we've gotten to the point, most of us, not all of us, but most of us, by the time we've gotten to the point that we are asking for help, we want somebody to meet us with some answers and some assurity and certainty so that we can give trust completely up front, right? Absolutely. And the reality is we all trust differently. There are some people who give 100% trust, and then with each infraction, it's taken away like a debit, right? And then you have some people who give no trust whatsoever, but with each thing that someone does, it's added in. So now but we're not, most of us aren't stopping and thinking about, well, how do I give my trust, right? We're not entering in relationships thinking like that. So now that someone's thinking about going abroad, they need to have this conversation with self as well as with loved ones. How do I trust people? Because I'm now taking my physical well-being and going to put it in the hands of someone who I do not know. And I'm saying that I'm trusting this person to care for me and to do this procedure. We haven't even gotten to language differences and cultural
That's a whole level, but we're going to get into that.
Right. So when you're talking about anxiety, some of the anxiety is already rising on the unconscious and subconscious levels, just with the sheer fact of, am I really going to have this procedure and put myself in this predicament? Right? And then I got to take into consideration, now I'm traveling. How far am I traveling? And how much time is needed for me to travel back, right? And then family as well. Do I need to take them into consideration? Is everybody on board with me having this procedure? Are there some people who are against me having this procedure? How am I navigating that internal and external conflict? So there's all of these things. So let's see what they have. When you're tired of being sick, you will make them. That's right.
Yeah, and that's interesting. Alicia, thank you so much. She's a subscriber. She's amazing. She's made some recent decisions that she's considering it, and you know, I'm sure that brings a whole wealth of anxiety and fear to a certain extent. Especially what if you're a person that doesn't really seek care often, right? But you've made this decision for whatever reason. I'm going to go ahead and go abroad. I was speaking to a therapist this morning, and they happened to share, they said, do you know that 65% of our thoughts naturally are negative? And I said, wait, what? 65 is really high. Naturally, said, so you already wake up going against yourself,
Come
where you
on.
have to go ahead and condition yourself
That's right.
to be positive.
That's right.
And I said to myself, wow, that is a really high number. And I wanted to
Mm-hmm.
bring that up because what you're talking about with trust and being vulnerable, I always say, as a nurse, I always say I'm dealing with people in their most vulnerable state,
Yeah.
right? When you are scared, that's why a lot of times when people would say, oh, this patient is nasty, or that, they were rude to them, I really try to put myself in their shoes and say, well, they're probably scared, number
Yes.
one. No one
Yes.
has told them what's going on, and they're in
Yes.
the emergency room.
Yes.
They're probably hurting and probably took a very long time with whatever was going on before they finally decided to even get here.
Exactly.
So
Exactly.
let's talk about that
Yeah.
vulnerability and that trust factor, and not knowing, even if you do your research and say, okay, I looked into whether they're accredited, the
Mm-hmm.
facility or the physician or clinician that you're dealing with, there's
Mm-hmm.
still a lot that comes with that.
Yeah.
Traveling out of your comfort zone and
Yes.
maybe even away from family. If you have a support, hopefully they can go with you. But if they can't travel, you may go at it alone.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. And trusting people for your pre-op care, your during the procedure, and
Yes.
then afterwards as well. I remember I
Yes.
was having my own medical procedure here in the States, and they're getting ready to put the anesthesia on, and I'm looking at them like, now I'm trusting you here. You better make you better make sure I wake up or I'm getting you. Like I'm gonna figure out how to haunt you. You better make sure, right? Because I got things to do.
That's
So,
right.
and that was just stateside. But these are all the things that are going through people psychologically, whether they admit them or not. All
Right.
right. So it is a big deal when you're talking about one, having a medical procedure and talking about going overseas. So now, if we're looking to go overseas, what type of flight are we talking about? Right.
Mm.
Are we talking about a 2 hour flight? Are we talking about a four, a five, a six? There's been recent talk about, going to Turkey for
Yes.
these, right, for these kind of full wellness procedures
Yeah.
that are very affordable, and they tie it into a stay. So it's like a vacation and a wellness check. I know people who've gone to Cuba
Yeah.
and where else did somebody recently go? Colombia
Mm-hmm.
for dental treatments and so forth. And, they're doing it over the weekend. They leave on a Friday, have the procedures done Saturday, Sunday. They're flying back on a red eye Sunday night and back at work on Monday. But
Yes.
that should all things go well, right?
Yes.
Because you also need permission to fly. I remember after having my surgery and needing to go to St. Lucia, and it
Mm-hmm.
was a question of, will I be able to fly? Because it's a matter of blood clots and,
Absolutely.
all of these types of things that you have to take into consideration. And you need to make sure your medical team is being honest with you about what medical considerations you need to take into consideration in your healing time. I had fibroids removed and I had a full hysterectomy. So it was a matter of, can I sit in certain
Yes.
procedures, right? Because I was flying. I had that surgery on August 5th, several years ago, and I was in the plane like August 25th.
Wow.
And they said only because I was as healthy as I was did they allow me to fly. But boy, oh boy, when my stomach got tired, I needed to recline. And so having support on the other side, I had a team of friends in St. Lucia who were like, no, you're not doing
Mm-hmm.
anything.
Yeah.
Right now, I was fortunate to have those caretakers on the other side,
That's the thing.
right?
Yeah.
Who's your support? So psychologically, you have to take in honest inventory of who is in your support system on
Yeah.
both sides when you're there as
Yeah.
well as when you're coming back.
Absolutely. Giselle, thank you so much for joining. She says there are significant risks associated with post-procedural flying. And you're right,
Mhm.
Giselle. That's something that anyone that is, especially if you're going at it alone, because you can certainly use what's called medical tourism facilitators, or they say health tourism facilitators, who they are similar to what the airline industry has with anyone who's taking care of you, who's agent. But they're handling all the medical aspects. They're helping you find a facility, a physician or clinician. They're working with the facilities, handling everything from translation services, making sure that you have pre and post conversations. You submit all your paperwork, the interpretation services, all those things, and also planning of where you're going to stay for your recovery, how long, your expectations. All of those pieces are met when you have a medical tourism facilitator. But there's some people that work directly with the facility, and there's nothing wrong with that. If you decide to do that, they tend to have, especially if they're accredited, and I look at JCI, the Joint Commission International Accreditation. If you're working with facilities that are JCI accredited, you'll find that they typically have a department, international department, that will handle all of that for you, where you may not need an additional outside facilitator. They have someone that's hired that will do all of those pieces for you. And with that, again, a certain level of trust, but again, you have credentials that are backing them, accreditation that's backing them. But those are some of the questions they ask, based on whatever procedure or treatment you are going to have. They will make sure that you are aware and educated about all the associated risks. When is the first or next time you should be even considering getting on a plane for many of the reasons you mentioned, especially clots, and if you're going to have cast put on, those types of things, a lot of times people don't know. And in the air is not the place you want to find out.
Let me tell you something. And you're not feeling well, and now I'm sitting in the middle seat between people I don't know. Come on.
Absolutely.
For an extended period of time, and I got to worry about you trying to sleep on me on that side and this side. Like now I'm doing extra movements that I normally wouldn't do. Like we have to take these things into consideration. Again, length of flight, right? How are you without having had some sort of medical procedure? What is your realistic amount of time that you can travel comfortably? When I went to Ghana, I could have done a straight flight. I don't mind flying. So I could have done a straight 14-hour flight to Ghana, but I opted to go to Heathrow so that I could get out and walk around 6 hours over, and let me do another 6-7 hours down, right? It was just, for me, peace of mind, movement, and so forth. So you have to be honest with yourself. How far can you travel when you feel well?
Right.
Because when you don't feel well, that's a whole nother thing. And don't let the airplane have to circle or do an emergency landing somewhere, right?
That has happened. I've been on 2 flights where that's happened.
Delayed arrivals.
Exactly. Delayed arrivals, late arrivals, sitting in a position. And if you're not in comfortable seating or larger seats or more space, that plays a role as well. You cannot anticipate every situation that'll happen as it relates to the travel. You can have weather issues, mechanical issues. Those are the things that you do need to think about. So definitely encourage everyone who's considering going abroad for any type of treatment, surgery, making sure that you allow yourself enough time, enough room to have your recovery period in the place where you had the treatment or the surgery. It's really important that you are well enough to travel. Sometimes you can't even anticipate some of the changes to your daily activities, things that you do all the time, and then of course, work and relationships, all of that stuff, you're leaving that for a while, but certainly your health is your priority. You need to behave as such. There are a number of things that you can exacerbate if you move too quickly or jump on a plane too quickly, in addition to some of the psychological things.
That's right. But when you talked about that, and I see Giselle wrote something in here. What did she say?
Oh, yes. She says, Giselle has a medical concierge service. And she says she supports international clients that come to the UK for private medical care. She said, we look after clients from start to finish. Okay. Well, thank you, Giselle.
Yes. Does that count? Massage therapy. Wait, look, I just need to go lay out somewhere.
I think I might have to contact her to get her onto and interview her as well.
That's a great
people
one.
are interested in that industry, but they don't really know the inner workings of what type of education is involved in that, and the extent to what your practice. So I think it'd be good to have you on. That's something I can reach out to you for that. I can
Yeah,
email
that'll be
LinkedIn.
great. Yeah, look at Shay. Shay says she didn't even know
Yeah,
about this
see,
industry.
it's a lucrative industry, but you
Hmm.
really need to know your stuff. And that's the reason why I want to make sure I have a medical tourism facilitator come on and talk about the ins and outs and answer some questions as well.
Yeah,
And so
and
that's
to
coming soon, guys. Don't
who,
worry.
yeah, who is this person
This is
that
my
just?
father. You can consider
Oh, hey,
business class travel. It would be worth the money. Yes,
yes,
absolutely. Hey, Dad, thank you for
yes,
the support. But
it's
you're
so
right.
true.
That is true. So business class travel, and then if you're going really far, consider those seats, the lay flat seats. Depending
Mhm.
on what you're doing. I've heard of people doing BBLs and mommy makeovers, and they're supposed to sit even just in the wheelchair and not.
Yes,
And I heard that they're supposed to encourage walking, but they sit the entire time because they're in so much pain.
yes,
Sitting too long after something major like that is
yes,
not good for you. It
no,
is not good for you.
no,
So these are things that you need to be aware of so you can just allow your body the time to heal.
yes,
Any type of surgery is considered trauma
yes,
because it's not normal for the
no,
body. So it's something that even though it's controlled and you have skilled physicians, it's something that you need to consider. And oftentimes, specifically for cosmetic surgery, I
hmm,
think people just think of it as, oh, I'm just going for this quick thing and I'm going to come back. Maybe someone they know has had that happen and they just
hmm,
think it's going to be the same. I tell people all the time, your health is similar to a fingerprint.
yes,
I don't care how many people went to that physician, that location, that facility. It doesn't mean that you're always going to have the same outcomes,
that's right.
right? So that's
Mhm.
something that to consider. I do want to talk about
Yes,
because anxiety and fear comes up in the pre-op session, when you
hmm,
start talking about, okay, we're going to do this, we're getting ready. What can people do to help prepare them for
yeah,
this procedure or treatment that they're going to have? Because I'm thinking, when you think about people who have cancer treatments
yes,
or fertility treatments, that is
hmm,
over a lengthy period of time,
hmm,
and just kind of preparing yourself mentally for being out of your element for that period of time. And maybe you can have someone support you, but maybe not for that entire period of time. So they may have to fly
hmm,
back to their home country and go to work, and then you'll be alone for a part of that time. Talk about some
yeah.
things people can consider to help them with their mental health as they go through that.
Yeah, I want to say one thing about what your dad said first, what your father said first,
Sure.
because, right, financial stressors
That's
is
it.
real.
Yeah.
And so that can create anxiety also.
Hmm.
How much is it going to cost you to have the procedure and the rest time
Yeah.
that you need? Right? Can you take off that amount of time comfortably?
Hmm.
Can you buy the business class ticket so that you are giving yourself the optimal experience as opposed to sitting, on a tight little spot? Now you just enhanced yourself. You know you can't fit in that space no more. You could fit in it going down, but you can't fit in it coming back.
Oh man.
So, but we got to look at the financial piece because that is a stressor as
Right.
well. All right.
Right.
And so the thing about anxiety is it is this imagining of something that you think is going to happen or might happen. And so
Hmm.
a lot of times the way to counter that is to deal with the facts. So making sure that you are reviewing like the reviews of these particular places. Dr. Ramantal told you, look, make sure that they're accredited by certain places. So do your research. So that's the first thing. When I was thinking about it, I said, okay, what can I give them? And the word rest and reset kept coming back to me. And I love
Mm.
acronyms. So I said that R is multiple, right? You want to make sure you're researching. You want to make sure that you are reading the reviews. You want to, and I always tell people when you read reviews, click on the thing that says most recent, not just the
Yes.
top reviews.
Yes.
All right, because the top reviews might have been 5, 6 years ago, and that person may not be there anymore.
That is
So
so true.
right? So you want to do the most recent. The other thing is you want to relax. You want to start doing relaxation techniques, whether that's deep breathing, if and because it's not one or the other. You start learning how to incorporate all of these different things. You want to learn how to do the deep breathing. You want to learn how to be mindful, meaning stay in the moment.
Mm-hmm.
YouTube is filled with all types of ambient music and frequencies and hertz, like 528 hertz, all of these things to relax your mind and your body and prepare yourself for this. And so if you know this is something that you're going to do, don't wait until you're traveling. Create a playlist. Like I have a healing playlist where I listen to music, I pay attention to how it impacts my body. And
Mm-hmm.
even if it says this will help you heal and rest, but my body is like that, I'm like, oh, not for me, because
Right.
everybody is different. And so
Absolutely.
I have to pay attention. So start listening, start creating those healing sounds for you.
Mm-hmm.
And get used to, get in the habit of doing these things, because so many of us aren't in the habit of taking time out for ourselves.
Mm-hmm.
So then when all of a sudden you move into having a procedure, you want to move like you used to move in,
That is it.
because you haven't taught yourself how to be still.
That is so true. And that's a thing that I think, especially women,
Mm-hmm.
women do that all the time because they have so many roles they occupy: the mother, the sister,
Mm-hmm.
the daughter.
Mm-hmm.
But then they're also usually head of household. So they're thinking about what's for dinner for everyone else. Got to get this one to school. I have to go to work. Maybe they care for a parent,
Yeah.
on top of all of that.
Yeah.
All of those stressors,
You've
along
been
with
watching me. That's my whole life.
I didn't mean to put you out there.
She just put me, y'all. You see how she do you? Watch out,
Oh,
Giselle. Watch
no,
out, girl. Like,
no, but it
it's
brings up a
real.
couple of things because I found out that pre-op mental health scores can
Yes.
significantly predict
Yes.
your post-op pain
Yes.
scores. So
Yes.
I would love for you to talk about that because I'm thinking anyone, and it can go with fear. But if you already have a history of anxiety, a
Mm-hmm.
history of any
Mm-hmm.
type of behavioral health issues, I think that adds to your fear,
Yes.
and
Yes.
how you cope with it is really key to
Yeah.
getting through this entire process.
So it can add to your fear, one, but also it can, well, in addition to your sense of self, your identity.
Mhm.
And so this is something we also have to be mindful of when having certain procedures. So if it's like losing weight, how one has seen themselves and now they have this new body, if they've had some sort of body surgery, um, they have an identity with this former body,
Mhm.
and now you have to have a new relationship with this new body, and
Mhm.
that takes time to
Yeah.
adjust to, because there is this idea that if I look like this or if I have this, then my life will look like this.
Yes.
And
Yes.
it is not a, Harry Potter, right? It doesn't happen like that.
Right.
And so there has to be that piece of taking the time and moving into who you are and how you want to present to the world.
That's so interesting that you brought up weight because that's a common theme that I see with people who have lost a significant amount of weight. It takes so much time for their mind to register
Yes,
themselves as the new weight.
yes,
They continue to wear some of the old clothes to the point where people are saying, your clothes are falling off of you. Don't you see that? And
yes,
they're like,
no.
no, they don't. They
Mm-mm,
really don't. And that's
mm-mm.
actually the procedure that sort of led to me even going to YouTube and starting a channel about medical tourism because
Oh,
most of the people I saw were people that went for gastro
mm-hmm,
surgery to lose weight, and it was botched in another country, and they came into
mm-hmm,
the emergency room where I am in South Florida, and this was years ago.
mm-hmm,
And many of them were Hispanic and Black women
mm-hmm,
coming in, and doctors had to try and just fix what someone else botched. So
mm-hmm.
that's where everything started for me in terms of saying something's going on here and no one's doing anything
Yes,
about it.
Yeah.
But I do believe weight in particular plays a role with your psyche,
Oh,
you
yeah.
know. But I also think when you start talking about something as sensitive as fertility,
Yeah.
or even if you're talking about cancer and perhaps you decided to go with a surgery,
Yeah.
maybe you have a double mastectomy, those kinds
Mhm.
of things, and looking at your body differently
Yes.
post op,
Yes.
some of those things.
Yeah. There's so many, and I know I didn't fully answer your other question yet. Okay, let's see what's Gwendolyn say.
Oh yeah, that's mom.
Oh, okay.
She says, I'm enjoying this discussion. You're getting to the root of the things that we have not always considered.
All
Thank
right.
you. Thank you for
Thank
joining.
you. Yes, yes, yes. Yeah, there's so many pieces there. So one, it's understanding who you are pre, during, and post-op, right?
Mhm,
So there's that. There is also releasing the roles, and we're back to trust.
mhm,
Trusting someone else to perform the duties that you cannot do while you are in the process of recovery,
mm.
right? Because you'll be stressed out thinking about, I would do it this way, I would do it faster.
So
They
true.
can't do it as good as me. Look at that person trying to take, they know I'm supposed to do, right? All it is internal dialogue.
Mhm,
So, right, being honest before the surgery, who are you assigning to do what and for how long? So
mm.
if you're used to cooking your meals for yourself, for the family, and now you need to entrust somebody else to do that because you're not supposed to be standing up for long periods of time. You're not supposed to be lifting more than 5 pounds.
Right.
You're not supposed to be, right? You have to adhere to that because a lot of times after surgery, and I'm guilty, I will raise my feet and my toes are cute, so I can do that, right? So when they said be on that couch, lay down and do nothing, like don't even pick up a book, do absolutely nothing. And Dr. Ramantal, you know I'm always doing something.
Yes. Yes.
So to be shut all the way down and told not
Mm.
to do anything, and I had people calling me, texting me, begging me, please listen, don't do anything.
Right.
Even though your exterior looks like it's healed, your
Mhm.
interior still needs more time to heal. And so,
Absolutely.
to your point, the body has experienced a trauma and it takes the time that it takes to reset itself. And we have to give it that. And I had to reconcile. So, you talk about mental health and
Mhm.
wellness. I had to reconcile that. And I'm like, but I want to get on the treadmill and I want to do my step aerobics and I want to do this. And so I was like, I'm going to put a step next to the bed. So I'm going to get me
Oh
something.
my goodness.
And Edmund is just looking at me like, girl, you is a hard head, right? But here's the thing, you have to know yourself. You have to know what type of support that you need. You have to be able to ask for the help that
Mm.
you need.
Mm.
Mm,
That's a tough one for a lot of people.
yes, it is.
It's a tough one.
So ask and receive,
That's it. Right.
right? And that means sometimes you have to be patient.
Mm-hmm.
And just for definition's sake, patient means waiting without complaint.
It's true.
Okay.
That is true. No, it's a hard one for a lot of us,
It
especially if you're a
is.
person that is go, 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 always
Yes.
on the run. What about the flip side? What about when it's you go in
Yes.
one way, and even if you're not 100%, you come out of that knowing that,
Mhm.
or maybe even not, maybe it's a surprise and something was botched, but you no
Mm.
longer have the ability to do all of what you
Mm.
used to do pre
Yeah.
surgery,
Yeah.
pre treatment.
So yeah, so that's where we start looking at things like a depressive episode
Mm,
that we have to be mindful of, that we are and even let me say this back to the weight loss piece, it ties in that now you look like you want it to look,
mhm.
but then now you're feeling upset because you don't feel as though people were accepting you for how you were before,
Wow. Wow.
right?
That's a
So
new level. Yeah.
yeah. So there's this internal conflict of self-acceptance, and self-love.
Mm-hmm.
And so now let's take it to a botch situation. I should have left well enough alone. I mean, I do not know this person in any way, shape, or form. I'm only going by what they said in the media, but they talked about how upset Kanye West was when his mother went to have that procedure and then she ended up making her transition,
Right.
right? And so the regret and the frustration and the sadness and the guilt and
Mm-hmm.
the shame. And so these feelings can occur on multiple levels and multiple amounts of intensity.
Mm.
And so it becomes very important that people are being honest about their feelings and exploring their feelings. And yes, you can do it alone. This is why, I'm a big proponent of journaling.
Right.
Um, but it's also helpful if you were to get a therapist,
Right.
and that can be a master's level counselor, social worker, therapist. You can get a doctoral level one, a psychologist, and so forth. So, and definitely, I'm going to recommend that you get one if you're thinking about having a procedure so that you can work through that prior to the
Oh, good.
procedure. And then this way, the person can also be part of your support team
Mm-hmm.
during and after the
Okay.
procedure.
Oh,
Okay.
that's good.
Because even as you're thinking about, depending on what you're having, body enhancement, reduction, anything, you are going to be working through self image and
Mm-hmm.
self awareness. And at
Okay.
least you have someone who's supporting you during this process. And even if you're doing any type of chronic illness or cancer treatment, so forth, again, you're just adding layers of support. So if we go back to that acronym of rest or reset, and like I said, the R is for research and
Mm-hmm.
relaxing, reviews, then this E is for evaluating, right? What's the best procedure to go with? Where's the best location to
Mm-hmm.
go? Once you've done your research, then you want to evaluate what you're looking at. And then the S is who's in your support system, right? Who is going to help you and in what ways will they help you? And you got to be honest about who can help you with what.
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes you want somebody to help you, but that person's not equipped to help
Yeah.
you in that space. When I had my surgery, God bless Edmund, he was there, but there were some emotional pieces where I know it was hard for him to help me in that moment. And so this is where like my cousin or my girls would be right there to support me through it and to support him through it
Right.
as well. And that's the other thing we have to think about, the family members. Who's
Right.
there to help support them? Because we have multiple businesses. So he couldn't stay by my side the whole time. He needed to go do that and he needed to know it was okay and that I would be cared for. So my cousins and my mentees came to sit with me during the day, and that let him be okay to
Right.
go do what he needed to do for us.
No, that's a good point. I hadn't thought about multiple people to support you because a lot of times you do kind of depend on maybe one or
Mhm.
two people. And then sometimes, depending on what you're going for, you may not want to share
That's
that
right.
part of your life with that person and say, you know what, I really don't want to discuss my fertility issue or
Yeah,
my cancer with this person.
that's right.
And they decide not to tell them anything. They just say, oh, I'm going on a trip.
Mhm.
You know,
Mhm.
you mentioned something about I love the idea of pre or pre-surgery
Therapy.
or pre-therapy. Yes, the therapy
Mhm.
ahead of time.
Mhm.
I think that's really valuable. What I wanted to ask was a lot of times, especially if you're going to travel to another country,
Yes.
I know that professionals have restrictions
Yes.
on their licenses and they're not able to see people in
Mhm.
certain places. Maybe they only have credentials for a particular state or
Mhm.
nationwide, but you're going to travel abroad.
Mhm.
How would you suggest they kind of deal with that or reach out to some form of mental health support? If they were going to travel and they say, hey, I have a therapist, but they told me they can only speak to me when I'm in country.
So number one, I would say clarify with your therapist because most likely you should still be able to be fine because it's not like you moved.
Okay.
Right? You're just on vacation or where,
Okay.
right? And so you can still contact them via Zoom, WhatsApp, whatever, online program platform
Good.
you all are able to use. So just because you've gone away temporarily doesn't mean you have to stop services, but always check with your therapist to make sure, because every state and jurisdiction has their differences. So
Sure.
that's number one. Number two, there are hotlines, like
Hmm.
there's 988, which is the National Crisis Hotline. There is also something called helpguide.org, and that allows you to pick the country that you're going to,
Hmm.
and it gives you filters. So again, that's helpguide.org. You can pick the country that you're going to, and you can also pick the service that you need. So
Okay.
if it's dealing with addictions, if it's dealing with like ADHD, if it's dealing, it gives you the rundown, and then it'll give you a phone number or a website that you can go to.
Oh, that is great. So 988, that's a national crisis hotline. If
Yeah.
you need some mental health support in any way, shape, or form, and that's something they can use outside of the US.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
And
Yeah.
then helpguide.org. I put all of this in the chat, everybody, but helpguide.org. I love that you said you can pick the location,
Yeah.
also whatever topic
Yeah.
area, maybe it's a illness or something like that.
Yeah.
Oh, wow, that's
Yeah.
amazing.
So there's so many things that are out there now. That's one thing I will say. I don't know if this stuff was available pre-pandemic, but
Hmm.
post-pandemic, they started populating the resources that are available. Another place, of course, wherever you're going, you can always check with the U.S. Embassy to
Okay.
see what they have. The CDC, of course, is always another great place to take a look and see what's there. The World Health Organization is also another great resources. So the resources are there. I definitely encourage you to talk with your primary care physician. If you don't have a working relationship with one, start to establish one.
Yes,
Because you mentioned something earlier, which is very important. Sometimes some doctors don't like to clean up other doctors' work.
they don't. They don't.
All
Especially
right.
surgeons. Surgeons are
Yeah.
like, who did this? And a lot of times, at least for the US, the reason for that is because, let's face it, the US is a very litigious society. You can sue for any reason, shape, form. I
Hmm.
mean, you can sue for hot coffee from a place, a
Come on.
drive place you picked it up from. You can sue
Yes.
for this.
Yes.
So someone may have gone for surgery somewhere else. It was botched. They come back to their home country and experience complications, head to the
Hmm.
emergency room, and what happens is they need some emergency surgery.
Yeah.
No one likes to touch it, but they do it. Even if they do a phenomenal job, save your life, even
Come on.
because of those other complications, you can't see past that. And you end up suing that last person that touched you for
Yeah.
things that they did not actually, they were not the cause of. So they
Hmm.
are really particular about, I've seen some surgeons say, I'm not going to, they refuse.
Yeah.
They're like, I'm not going to touch that
Yeah.
case.
Yeah.
They have to find someone else.
Yeah. So you want to check with your doctor. One, will they, right? In the
Yes.
event of an emergency, will they, or even just follow up, will they do that? If they won't, do they have any recommendations on who? You can also find that out from the people who have done the surgeries in the country that you're going to, because most likely you are not the first person.
Mm-hmm.
And so you can find out from their database, who do people follow up with. So it may be a matter of going to another state, but it's easier sometimes to go to another state than it is to go back to the country that you just came from.
That is true. So true. Much, much easier once you're in your own country and you know how to maneuver all
Hmm.
of those pieces.
Yeah.
Wow, it's really interesting. I wanted to ask also, because a lot of times people don't anticipate, I think, the emotional
Yeah.
pieces that come with this.
Yeah.
And I did want to spend a little bit of time on, and not thinking negatively, but just being realistic about if there are complications in
Hmm.
country,
Hmm.
and it causes them a number of different stressors, not only maybe pain, possible trauma, um, the financial
Yeah.
stressors that you mentioned before, because now it means you have to stay
Yeah.
longer, and it's for
Yeah.
an unknown period of time,
Yeah.
because again, it's a complication. You just, maybe you even got something like an infection, right?
Baby.
Those
Yes.
kinds of things. How can one best prepare their mind mentally for
Hmm.
handling situations like that?
Yeah. So this book that you're going to be writing, where they're going to,
You are speaking it into existence. I love it. I love
I got you, mom and dad. I'm getting her. I'm getting her. Let's,
Oh my goodness.
but I think it is so important that as much pre-planning as you can do
Mhm.
helps to ease the anxiety and the ambiguity.
Okay.
Right. Because what happens is a lot of times our anxiety is stemming from what we don't know.
True.
And so, yes, there are going to be things that we don't know, but it doesn't have to be as much.
Okay.
Meaning, we can find out in the case of emergency if there's an infection, where do I go? What do I do? And
Mhm.
have that name, have those names, the name of the place, potentially a contact person like Giselle was talking about
Yeah.
with her business, having phone number, having email. If you can have maybe two or three, so you have go-tos, right? Those types of things help to ease the anxiety, because when you're in crisis mode, remember your analytical part of your brain is turned down to being offline, and that fight, flight, or freeze is on high.
Mhm.
And so, at least if you have something written in your book where you're going to say, here's my emergency list that I'm going to, in addition to what's on the phone.
Sure.
Because heaven forbid you lose your phone, the phone goes dead,
Yeah.
right? So it's a matter of both and. It's not either or. You want to have your paper copies as well.
Yeah.
So that's one of the first things. I know when I was in Ghana for 2 months, 1 week, I don't know what happened, but I was dizzy as nobody's business.
Wow.
Everything was just spinning, spinning, spinning. And all I kept thinking was, am I going to have to go to the hospital? And there was this fear that came over me, because every prejudice and stereotype that I ever heard about facilities outside of the US came flooding through my head. I don't know.
Naturally.
I'm not saying they were true. I'm just
Right.
telling you where my mind went.
Right.
Right. And thank goodness it turns out I actually had cousins who lived in Ghana who I met for the first time when I went over there. So that gave me a base of security
Yeah.
in that moment. And I understand that when most people travel, you don't have that.
Right.
But it gave me, and I let them know I'm not feeling well. What do you recommend?
Mhm.
And so they brought me some teas and different things like that. And it was like, if you don't feel better by this date, then we're going to take you to such and such a place.
Okay.
And so it was like, okay, because I hadn't done what I'm telling you to do. So trust me when I'm telling you, get your list in order. These are just things I hadn't taken into consideration. I was
Right.
excited to go. I had my yellow fever shot. I had all the shots that I was supposed to have. So I felt like I was good to go. And then there was this nuance that I
Yeah.
hadn't taken into consideration. So these things happen all the time. So the best way is to get that list together
Yeah.
on what are the things to do. I also recommend calling like a university that does exchange programs,
Mm.
because I
Good.
think they would have lists and resources for their college students
Mhm.
that you we would not normally think of, but that would be another place too. And a lot of universities, even overseas, may house universities from the states. So like
Right.
the
Right.
University of Ghana had, the University of, I think it was Southern California, they had an office inside the University of Ghana. And there was another, and then Webster University out of St. Louis, they had a university in Ghana as well. So there were all of these US touch points
Right.
overseas that normally you wouldn't be thinking about, but they exist.
Yeah, it's funny you say that because I usually tell people always look on the Joint Commission International's website for facilities to use for that accreditation for top quality. But if you find any facilities that are affiliated with U.S. Universities, you'll find usually they are accredited. But if they are not, they still have a high standard. I know many of the big name universities in the States have locations all over the world, and you are
Mhm.
one more than likely going to find someone that speaks English if
That's
that's what
right.
you need,
That's
and
right.
two, they're going to understand what you're accustomed to and be able to
Yeah.
provide you with some type of assistance as
Yeah.
well. So I'm glad that you brought that up, because I remember seeing the documentary of a woman who decided to go for a mommy makeover, and she said, I'm going
Hmm.
to take my two daughters, and her daughters were teenagers. They were still minors, but they were about 15, 16, and she took them and she had complications, and the complications left her unconscious.
Mm.
The kids were they she had only gotten a hotel room for a certain period of time, and she
Hmm.
was there for an extended period of time, and the hotel had to kick the kids out. They're
Mm.
minors, they couldn't open their mother's phone because they didn't have her
Mm.
passcode. They had no idea what would happen if she were to be on life support, what her wishes were,
Yeah.
and the kids were just sort of stranded. So
Yeah.
these things really happen, so you
Yeah.
really need to make sure that you take into account
Yeah.
what is going on before you travel.
Yeah.
Provide those that you travel with information on what your wishes are, so that it's very clear who to contact, the
Yeah.
phone numbers,
Yeah.
bank card if they have to fly someone else over. Those
Hmm.
types of things are really important.
Yeah.
um,
Yeah.
see, Emma Hall, thank you for joining. She says Loyola Memorial Hospital in Chicago has affiliation with Holy Family University
Mm.
in the Philippines.
Oh,
Great.
wow.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. There's so many universities that are out there that can still assist or provide assistance. And before you even travel, we suggest that you certainly look into that in addition to whatever facility
Yeah.
that you are traveling to.
Yeah.
I know
And
we're getting close to time. I didn't want to end this without talking about some of the mental health and emotions that go into it if you're going for a child, because
mm,
child medical tourism is very real,
mhm.
and watching your child have to go through some form of treatment or maybe a surgery, some
Yeah.
of the emotions, the raw emotions that go with that, but you having to seem like you're strong for
Mhm.
that child. If you can just mention that before we kind of summarize everything.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, so much so. And again, back to the journaling point, whether it's actually in a pen, paper, or you're using your app, journal app, or just even a voice note, it
Mhm.
is important that you are truly honest with yourself about all of the feelings that you're going through: sadness, despair, disheartened, scared, nervous, uncertain, right? And name them for what they are.
Mm,
And because feelings are interesting, if they go unspoken, they remain in the body and they will express themselves in some way. So if we think about the word emotion, with E meaning energy, and
mhm,
so right, emotions are energy in motion. And so if you don't name what that energy is, it remains in motion because
wow.
it's letting you know I'm in here. It's like a kid in class. It's like, oh, 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 oh. And it doesn't stop until you call it out.
Right.
All right. And it doesn't matter if it's only a little bit,
Mhm,
a little minor experience, meaning less of intensity versus another feeling that is feeling bigger and getting more attention. You
mhm.
have to call all of them out. I highly, highly, highly recommend you can Google like 100-word feeling chart and it come up. I'm in the process of building my own feeling chart. It will be on my website
Nice.
very soon on
Good.
askdrwalls.com. Yes, I am.
That's
Um,
great.
and so I recommend go through all of the feeling words because sometimes we're feeling things that we don't realize we're feeling. And
Mhm,
because it's not a feeling word that we tend to use, we will overlook it. But it
Right.
doesn't mean that we're not experiencing it. And so when you're going through the feelings chart, if like a certain word just jumps off the page at you, write
Mhm.
it down, right?
Okay.
Look up the definition of it. If you read a feeling word and you notice that your shoulder jumps or you feel a twinge in your stomach, write it down because your
Mm,
body is connected to it somehow. And so you can even start with a sentence starter. How am I feeling about my child receiving this service? And
mhm.
then start going through the feelings list to see which ones jump out at you. And the same with yourself. How am I feeling about going through this? So this
Right.
allows you to do the fuller exploration so that you are more self-aware and better equipped to go into these scenarios.
And that helps with healing too, right?
100%.
Okay.
100%.
Yeah.
Because if not, like I said, it just remains unexpressed. So it's like a zit that hasn't been popped. So
Mm, got it. Got it.
right. And we for those who like the pimple popper, what is that? What is that show that people watch? It's like, "Ugh, that's gross, but I can't turn away." Right. But it remains unexpressed, and anything that remains unexpressed stays inside the body.
Right.
All right. This is the thing that's about trauma. A lot of times, unspoken traumas, they are just housed in the body until it's finally released.
Wow. Man,
Mhm.
we could talk about this for many hours, but
Yeah,
I know that
absolutely.
we are at time. I do want to just summarize by saying, one, thank you, Dr. Walls, for coming. I feel
Mhm.
like you have shed so much light on just mental health with dealing with all aspects of medical tourism. I love that you brought in the financial stressors because
Mhm.
again, the top reason people travel happens to be cost savings. So thinking about some of the financial stressors for what type of ticket, if they're going to do first class, which I agree would be worth it.
Mhm.
But again, that's a cost. And
That's
then
right.
some of the hidden costs that you may not account for if you happen to need more time to heal,
Yeah.
or you have a complication, some of those things. But I love the rest and reset, the
Mhm.
evaluating, the support system. What
Mhm.
was the T?
Aha, well done. So the T is trust the healing process.
It's the healing process. That's why I always
Okay,
keep my notes, like you say.
that's right.
Trust the
Trust
healing
the
process.
healing process and tell when
Okay.
something is not feeling right.
Yes, absolutely. You know your body best. You need to speak up
That's right.
and never make someone make you feel like, oh, that's just anxiety. Because I've seen clinicians say they're just nervous, they're anxious.
Mhm.
You know when something is different and
That's
off
right.
with your own body.
That's right.
Speak up because it may be a matter of life and death. It
That's
may
right.
be, may very well be.
Yeah. Yeah.
Something else that I wanted to make sure that we reiterate for those who might have come in late, making sure that you're dealing with facts. You
Yes.
do all of your research beforehand.
Yes.
And I love your advice to get in contact with, if it's not your primary care, then certainly finding some behavioral health professional
Mhm.
ahead of time to
Yeah.
talk through the feelings and emotions that you are going to go through because there's a range of them,
That's right.
depending on what you're going to be going through.
That's right.
And I love the mindful thinking, the creating a playlist. I love
Mhm.
that because I love music. So I really
Mhm.
love that. And assigning people duties. You
Yes.
usually mothers, especially women and black women, I will say, and women of color, you are usually taking on the burden of so much.
Yes.
Go ahead and assign some of that work to someone
That's
else,
right.
please.
That's right.
And
That's
let
right.
them do it.
That's
Give
right.
them
And let
room
them
to
do
do
it.
it.
And let them do it. That's right. And let me say
Yeah.
this with the playlist too, right? The playlist also works for your traveling.
Oh,
So if you know that it's going to take you 5 hours to get there, create your 7 hour playlist
oh, nice.
because it's going to get you through and it's going to get you back. And then it's also healing. So it's setting your mind as you're going.
Mm,
And as far as trusting that healing process, let me say this when it comes to doing those activities of daily living, so ADLs for people who know that, um, it may take you a little bit longer during that healing process.
yeah.
Okay. So this is why I say trust the healing process.
Give
So
yourself
give yourself,
grace.
come on, give
Give
yourself
yourself
grace and give yourself
grace.
time,
Yeah, absolutely. And then
right?
the last one, which I love, journaling.
Oh, yeah.
Journaling. I think I love a combination of the music, the playlist, and the journaling. So
There we
make
go.
sure you're doing those things.
Yes.
Dr. Walls, tell
Yes.
everybody where they can find you. And I'm
Yes.
going to put in the chat
You
also.
can always check me out at askdrwalls.com, askdrwalls.com. All of my handles are Ask Dr. Walls on Instagram, on TikTok, on YouTube. It's Ask Dr. Walls 525. So please subscribe. I am always doing some sort of podcast. Normally we'd be doing one tomorrow, and Dr. Ramatar would be joining us. But I'm taking time off to do some stuff in the lab behind the scenes. I'm actually building some more Froggy Tea and Bunny stuff. So I'm excited to say it's the FTB Hop Shop, the Froggy Tea and Bunny Hop Shop, their store. So
Nice,
yes, with their
nice.
water
You all go
bottles and
out and
shirts.
support her, support
Thank
Dr. Walls.
you.
Subscribe to her YouTube channel, Ask Dr. Walls 525. She has me on once a month on
Yeah.
Thursdays, first Thursday of the month. So I thought it was so great to have her on my first
Hmm.
monthly live. And go to AskDrWalls.com, guys, and get her books. Get her books. They're
Hmm.
amazing.
Yes,
Okay.
thank you. I appreciate it.
Thank you all so much for joining. And you
Yeah.
all will see me next month with another guest. And if you have any comments or questions, drop them in the chat. We'll make sure we still get you an answer. And if you have ideas that you want us to cover, please feel free to drop them there too. I always love doing content that's requested. So until next time, everybody, be well.
Congratulations.
Thank
Great
you so much.
job.
Thank you.